At the center of the modern Indian flag sits a navy blue wheel with 24 spokes. This is the Ashoka chakra. In modern India, it represents justice and the righteous path of nonviolence, a concept known as Dhamma. But this icon of peace has a violent history. It was born from a conflict so destructive that it forced the man who won it to abandon the very idea of war. In 261 BCE, the Magadha Empire covered nearly the entire subcontinent. Its ruler, Emperor Ashoka, was a man of calculated ambition who sought to bring every corner of India under his control. Only Kalinga, a wealthy trade hub on the eastern coast, remained independent. For Ashoka, this wasn't an option. Kalinga was a gap in his map that had to be closed. When diplomacy failed to bring Kalinga into the fold, Ashoka moved his entire imperial force toward their borders. He was determined to achieve absolute geographical supremacy, setting the stage for a transformation that would change the course of Indian history. Ashoka's army arrived at Kalinga with the full weight of the empire behind them. It was a force designed for total submission. But Kalinga was a society built on independence. They didn't just have a professional army, they had a population refusing to live under a foreign crown. As the siege began, the lines between soldiers and civilians vanished. Farmers, laborers, and women took up arms to defend their homes against the imperial advance. The defense was brave, but ended in slaughter. When fighting stopped, 100,000 Kalingans were dead. The violence extended beyond the battlefield. Another 150,000 survivors were forced into exile, emptying the region. Ashoka had won his territory, but he had done so by dismantling an entire civilization to serve his own map. As the sun sat over Kalinga, the sounds of battle were replaced by a heavy silence. Emperor Ashoka walked out onto the plains to view the site of his final triumph. He had finally secured the total dominance he had spent years pursuing, but there was no glory in the view. He stood in a landscape of ash and bodies, surrounded by the wailing of the few who were left to mourn. In that moment, the logic of empire collapsed. Ashoka looked at the results of his orders and realized his conquest had cost more than any crown was worth. He had achieved absolute power, only to be broken by the reality of how he had used it. On that battlefield, Ashoka made a choice that had no precedent. He laid down his sword and declared he would never pick it up again. He turned toward Buddhism, pledging to rule through peace and social duty rather than military force. He began a massive project to share this new philosophy, carving edicts of nonviolence into stone pillars across India to ensure his change of heart was visible to every citizen. This pivot from conquest to compassion redefined his reign, turning a conqueror into the figure history remembers as Ashoka the Great. Today, that legacy is carried in the very center of the Indian flag. The Ashoka chakra is more than a design. It is a record of the day at Kalinga, when an emperor decided that land was less important than human life. It stands as a reminder that a nation's identity is defined not by the enemies it destroys, but by the justice and peace it chooses to protect.